Welcome to this presentation, From the Cubic Stone to the Mystic Rose, A Journey of Transformation with me, Chuck Dunning. The content for this presentation is largely from Chapter 5 of my book, A Rose Croix Oratory, Rosicrucian Reflections and Resources from a Night of the Eagle and Pelican. I'm releasing this on the Monday after Easter, and that seems like a very fitting bit of timing, and I hope it's meaningful to you. Now let's begin with a quote from the very influential Christian esotericist Eliphas Levi. Quote, "The great work is, before all things, the creation of man by himself, that is to say, the full and entire conquest of his faculties and his future. It is especially the perfect emancipation of his will." End quote. Like the builder's art of Freemasonry, the great work of psycho-spiritual alchemy, Hermeticism, and Rosicrucianism is a journey of transformation. But what do we mean by transformation? The earliest known use of the word transform dates back to the 14th century, where it was a verb specifically meaning to change the composition or structure of something. That sense of the word transformation is apparent when we think about the symbolism of a stone somehow becoming a rose. If you were to examine a stone with all your senses, it probably wouldn't naturally occur to you that it could become a rose. Likewise, if you were to carefully examine a rose, you probably wouldn't surmise that it could have once been a stone. Nonetheless, that very transformation is dramatically portrayed in the Scottish Rite Knight Rose Croix Degree, and its relevance to both Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism makes it a touchstone for contemplation. Even in a perfectly natural, less allegorical sense, if we didn't know what a seed was, how would we ever suspect that one of these hard, dry, dull-colored little kernels could ever transform into a magnificent bush of fragrant, flowering, colorful, silky beauty? What a journey of transformation has the essence of life in that seed undertaken. The great work urges us to engage in a similar act of transformation, just as Masonry urges us to build our moral and Masonic edifices. But transformation isn't something most people want, and I dare say even most Masons and students of Rosicrucianism. Instead, we want minor changes, like simply taking off some of our rough edges, polishing ourselves a bit, making ourselves a little better in some ways. We shy away from transformation because if we allow ourselves to truly transform, to actually change in composition or structure, then our old selves must die to make way for a new being that we cannot entirely foresee. What would happen if some of your beliefs and attitudes became significantly different, like about religion, politics, or what to do with your time, energy, and money? How might such changes affect your most important relationships? What would people think of you if you became a genuinely different person? Most of us have learned to become more or less comfortable with who we are, probably liking many things about ourselves. Even if we aren't entirely pleased with who and what we are, it is at least familiar to us, and we have learned how to get by with our particular set of strengths, weaknesses, vices, and virtues. So, if it ever does occur to us that transformation is possible in our lives, feeling comfort with what we know, fear of disturbing our social relationships, and fear of the unknown, most people simply avoid it. Yet, here we are, drawn to the traditions of Rosicrucianism and Masonry, with all their imagery, language, and ritual focused on transformation. Is our interest in these traditions simply due to some meaningless set of circumstances? Is it simple curiosity, an ego trip? Or is it because there is a truly inspiring light within them? Somehow, our souls have been drawn to one or both of these traditions, like moths to a flame, and most of us flutter around and around that flame, instinctively attracted to it, but also understandably avoiding direct contact with it. Even so, flying into the flame of transformation is exactly what these traditions urge us to do. INRI. Igne natura renovatur integra. All nature is renewed by fire. Renewal, rebirth, resurrection, rejuvenation, regeneration, reintegration, all of these words induce an inspiring sense of faith and hope about what awaits us if we will take up this journey into the unknown. In the journey of Freemasonry, right off the bat, we learn that the apprentice's primary work is to strive to perfect the ashlar, which represents the personal self. The perfecting of the stone is done through removing vices and superfluities and developing the several virtues introduced in that degree. They are also told that the EA represents the cornerstone of the lodge, bringing new life and new possibilities to the social and spiritual edifice of our fraternity. But then, somewhat strangely, the symbolism of the stone doesn't get the same kind of overt and literal attention in the Fellowcraft and Master Mason degrees, although everything within them is still directly relevant to it. The theme of a special stone appears in the higher degrees beyond the Craft Lodge, but then as something mysteriously discovered in the course of one's labors. In the 13th degree of the Scottish Rite, this discovery happens in a process of descent into the depths of a vault in the earth. What is found must then be brought back up and identified by those who know or can decipher its meaning. Keep that movement in mind, descent and ascent, because we'll come across it again. This context of discovering the special stone rather than producing it is highly significant. It suggests that while the moral and social ideal represented by the perfect ashlar, keystone, or cornerstone is something we should work toward, the special stone also alludes to something already existing, seed-like, deep within us, that needs to be uncovered, nurtured, and freed. That Masonic ritual also suggests we benefit from the assistance of others, helping us get down in there to find that treasure and to then bring it up and out into the light of day. This is an important thing to remember because so much of the language of transformation emphasizes its private personal dimension. But such work involves risks. We simply need the support of trusted companions to help us navigate those risks. What was lost has been found, raised up out of obscurity. But what is the significance of this perplexing discovery? Again, tradition tells us that we need the help of others to make sense of it. We should seek the counsel of wise elders and receive their assistance in understanding the profound significance of this magnificent discovery. In the 14th degree, it is put in its proper place, a place of reverence, respect, and protection. There is a great lesson here, for such a treasure is not something to be paraded around in foolish pride. According to the symbolism of the Scottish Rite, the answer to our question about its meaning is found by deciphering the image on the special stone one has discovered in the previously mentioned descent. That image is the Hebrew letter Yud within a triangle, which is also the emblem on the ring worn by Masons of the 14th degree. The motto inscribed within that ring is Virtus junxit mors non separavit. The simplest or most direct translation of the motto is Virtue unites, death does not separate, or what virtue has joined, death shall not separate. This motto naturally raises the question, what does virtue join that death cannot separate? Some Masonic writers have suggested the answer is that the practice of virtue creates an eternal bond of brotherly love between the hearts of Masons and between the generations of Masons throughout history. That view is understandable in part because some versions of the 14th degree ritual state that the ring represents not only devotion to virtue, but also commitment to others who share that devotion. The motto has sometimes even been translated as whom virtue unites, death shall not separate. However, this is a more interpretive than literal translation, as far as I know. In any case, the ring itself simply presents the emblem found on the cubic stone, which is explained as portraying the divine dwelling within us. By tradition, the ring may place that emblem of the divine around the same finger on which a wedding ring is worn, and thus it assumes the same meaning as the union of the triangular plate with the cubic stone, the union of the divine with the human. In summary, the Mason who wears this ring is theoretically one who, through contemplating and practicing virtue, has discovered, or is at least committed to discovering, something perfect, beautiful, and eternal hidden within oneself, something that reveals one's intimate connection with the divine, the very essence of one's own being. That is indeed a journey of transformation. But there is much more to know about how that transformation happens. Furthermore, it's important to realize that the journey isn't finished. The revelation of the significance of the stone and the emblems on it is not a stopping place, but a place for a new beginning, for intentionally taking further steps. One thing we have learned through this symbolism is that the processes of joining, uniting, and harmonizing things are vital to this work. In fact, Masonry is constantly reminding us of this truth in one way or another. For example, the opening of a Masonic lodge is symbolically represented by joining the square and compass. The square is associated with the material world because right angles are crucial to the strong, stable construction of buildings, and the compass is associated with the spiritual because it is used in working out the movements of heavenly bodies. Thus, the act of bringing them together at the opening of the lodge illustrates that the lodge should be regarded as a place where heaven and earth, the divine and the human, intersect in harmony. It marks the lodge as a sacred space for the purpose of members helping each other make the internal descent and ascent to realize the same harmony with the divine within their own souls. In our effort to better understand these processes of transformation, it is helpful to reflect for a moment on the antiquity and universality of this symbolic use of the square and compass. The phrase "kusi chu" is used in modern Chinese to signify the way things should be, the moral standard, but it literally means the compass and the square. This terminology traces back 5,000 years in the legend of Fuqi and Nuwa, the spiritual beings who are the father and mother of creation. Here you see them intertwined, with Fuqi holding a square to which is also attached a plumb bob, and Nuwa holding a compass. Above them is the sun, Below them is the moon, and around them are constellations of stars. The Chinese philosopher Mencius, who lived between 372 and 289 BCE, built upon that symbolism when he wrote, quote, "A master mason in teaching apprentices makes use of the compasses and the square. We who are engaged in the pursuit of wisdom must also make use of the compass and the square." End quote. The square and compass are also incorporated into this famous rebus image, which was first presented in the text Azoth of the Philosophers by Basil Valentine in 1613. Note that this speculative allegorical use of the square and compass was 21 years before the first recorded instance of non-operatives being accepted into Scottish craft lodges, and 33 years before Elias Ashmole's initiation into accepted Freemasonry. Interestingly, 1613 is also just 1 year prior to the publication of the Rosicrucian Fama Fraternitatis, soon followed by the Confessio Fraternitatis and the chemical wedding of Christian Rosenkreuz. These documents clearly express an interest in alchemy, and one of the wonderful things about this image is that it makes a direct connection between the symbolism of the square and compass and that of psycho-spiritual alchemy, and thus it offers more depth and detail about the Masonic journey of transformation. Rebus, the name of this image, is from the Latin res bina, meaning dual or double matter, and it is a result of the great work in alchemy. It represents the various qualities of the human soul, once opposing and at odds with each other, now integrated into a functional whole. They include the Sun and Moon, Mars and Venus, and Saturn and Jupiter, the rational solar masculine and the intuitive lunar feminine. Valentine's emblem shows that they have all been united with the harmonizing effects of Mercury at the top center. This integration puts the raw instinctive energy of life, represented by the green dragon, under the creative command of the illuminated philosopher, instead of being ruled by it through uncircumscribed passions and desires. In 1782, at the tail end of an era in which the so-called high grades of Masonry had been rapidly appearing all over Europe and overtly incorporating Rosicrucian and alchemical themes, Adam Friedrich Bohm published a document with the long and intriguing title Hermes Trismegistus, Old and True Natural Path, or The Secret of How to Prepare the Great Universal Tincture Without Glassware for Humans and Metals by a True Freemason. In that text, we find this illustration where the themes of union and harmony are represented in a manner very similar to the previous rebus image. It includes the sun, moon, planets, the dragon, and the earthly square and heavenly compass. He's even included the gauge or rule just beneath the square and compass. Bohm also attached Latin comments to offer more direction, which you see here translated into English. The top portion are lines from a famous alchemical document, the Emerald Tablet of Hermes, and communicate a message of vertical movement that parallels the descent and ascent of the Masonic process we previously reviewed. The words immediately following that passage in the Emerald Tablet, which Bohm didn't include, are, quote, "By this means you shall have the glory of the whole world, and thereby all obscurity shall fly from you." End quote. Instead, he has written about combining the red sun and white moon to emphasize that the work of integrating opposites, particularly the solar masculine and lunar feminine, is central to the process of transformation. Bohm has clearly made his own connection between the builder's art of masonry and the great work of psychospiritual alchemy, and through this document publicly suggested that they are one and the same. Also note that the universal tincture mentioned in Bohm's title is called Azoth by many alchemists, and Azoth is the key word in the title of Basil Valentine's work from which we have the previous image of Rebus. Azoth represents the perfected substance that holds the powers of all the other elements in equilibrium, and is also often referred to as the alchemical element of Mercury. And Hermes is the Greek name for the god Mercury. This image is also entitled Azoth. It was published by Stulzius von Stolzenberg in his Theatrum Chemicum in 1614, the same year as the publication of the first Rosicrucian Manifesto. As with the other images, we have the sun and moon, heaven and earth, the planets, and the fiery solar king and watery lunar queen. We also have land and sea, smaller emblems of 7 alchemical phases between the rays of the planets, and a cube identified as corpus, meaning the body, the raw matter of our material existence, in a triangular arrangement with the word anima, meaning soul, and spiritus, the spirit. Between the rays, in the rim of the circle, are 7 Latin words. Furthermore, the rays are numbered, proceeding clockwise from Saturn at the bottom. Moving in that order, the Latin words form the saying, Visita interiora terrae rectificando invienis, occultum lapidum, which means, visit the interior of the earth, and by rectification find the hidden stone. These words make an even stronger connection between the great work of alchemy and the Masonic descent to find a special stone. Among the most interesting things about this diagram is the pair of human legs extending down from the emblem and human hands held out from its sides. Just as with the Masonic gavel and ashlar, this emblem suggests that the work happens within us, that we are the earth of which the interior must be visited, and in which the operations of rectification, or putting things in right order, are to be done. We have repeatedly seen certain ways that Freemasonry, alchemy, and Rosicrucianism urge us to take this journey of transformation. And we have been given numerous hints about what that journey of inner work includes. The details of this image make the particulars of one way of doing that work even more apparent, and at last we will begin to consider them more fully. The 7 rays represent 7 fundamental energies of creation that are not only external to us but also present within our own being. Those energies are primarily represented by Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon, each of which can be associated with particular virtues, personality traits, states of consciousness, spiritual beings such as the gods and goddesses of the Roman pantheon, for which the planets are named, but also the angels and archangels of Western monotheism, and even the divine attributes of God. Each ray likewise has corresponding vices and superfluities to overcome, and passions and desires to manage. The numbering of the rays indicates an order to be followed in studying, invoking, contemplating, and rectifying their respective associations. The 7 alchemical emblems between the rays represent challenges and changes experienced as one advances in the work. So, for example, the first ray is that of Saturn, the god of death, the grim reaper. In meditating upon this ever-present element of nature, we recognize that nothing in the material world is permanent, and so reflect upon our own mortality, as represented by the raven sitting upon the skull. We may also take this imagery as an allusion not only to physical death, but to the death of the self, the personality, the ego death, which is necessary for psychospiritual transformation. That is hardly all there is to fully working with Saturn's associations, but it should give you a better sense of what it means to begin intentionally engaging a comprehensive process of true transformation from the inside out. While again noting the order of the planets, sun, and moon, it's useful to note that one of the most common descriptions of Rosicrucianism is a combination of magia, chemia, and Kabbalah. And here we find the very same order of the planets within the lightning flash of creation, shown in light blue, manifesting in the Kabbalistic tree of life, with its 10 sephirot, or spheres of emanated light. It strikes down from Keter, the first sphere, through the second, Chokmah, neither of which have planetary associations because the planets beyond Saturn weren't known in the ancient world. Then it moves into the third sphere, Binah, associated with Saturn, then to the fourth, Chesed, associated with Jupiter, and so on, in the exact sequence of the previous Azoth image. In the tradition of Kabbalah, whether the ancient Jewish form or the Hermetic and Christian forms, each sephirah or sphere on the tree of life is understood to have a set of associations, like those mentioned with the rays in the Azoth image. Furthermore, each sphere of light corresponds with a particular location relevant to the human body, as shown here. One significance of these associations is that they help make the process of the great work even more relevant to our personal being. In every culture, there are esoteric traditions and systems of working with the vital energies of the body, mind, and spirit. Perhaps the most well-known of those systems is that of the 7 chakras found in the various schools of yoga. And the chakras also have their correlations with planets, virtues, vices, and so on. This image shows an alignment of glowing discs, arranged vertically somewhat like the chakras of yoga, with the symbols of the planets, sun, and moon in the same order from top to bottom that we saw in both the Azoth image and the lightning flash on the Tree of Life. It also shows several associated vices that must be overcome in the process of spiritual illumination. Interestingly, what you are seeing is not from a school of yoga, but rather from a text by Johann Georg Gichtel entitled Theosophia Practica from 1696. Gichtel makes it very clear that the work of rectification is not just about following a list of do's and don'ts with external behaviors, but is also, and more importantly, an internal process like we've been considering. Speaking as a Christian theosopher, Gichtel says, quote, "If we want to contemplate and observe man in his deep inner generation, with our soul we need to leave the elemental life and the earthly astral and turn to the divine inner life of Jesus Christ. We must appeal to the grace of this dear doctor, that he may deign to open our eyes, closed until then by the devil from paradise, so that we may recover our eye of light to recognize and contemplate God in us." When the reader, friend of wisdom, seeks God in his miracles and wants to contemplate in himself the occult ternary, and by that he means the Trinity hidden within, he must first of all return to himself and learn to know himself to the bottom. Notice the language of descent that he's using here. To know himself to the bottom in its genesis and its triple life, for it is in itself the eternal image of God, according to the worlds of darkness and light. End quote. Gichtel also adds, quote, the benevolent reader must meditate by himself until he has attained intelligence and, as he might desire, to recognize himself and to contemplate himself in the light of divine wisdom, that he is interiorized with ardent application in the most profound center of his soul. End quote. In short, Gichtel is declaring that genuine transformation requires us to stop occupying our energies, our attention, care, and concern only with what's going on in the world around us and our thoughts and feelings about it. We need to dive deep within ourselves to reconnect with our divine essence. Just as Freemasonry, alchemy, Kabbalah, and Rosicrucianism have been telling us, each in their own ways. So let's say we've done that. We have descended into the depths of our souls, have discovered the perfect cubic stone bearing the divine spark of God, brought it up into our ordinary conscious awareness, and begun the work of rectifying and harmoniously reintegrating the elements of our being. Now we may come to know without doubt that we are always and everywhere in communion with the Creator. Is that the completion of the great work? Are there next steps? Well, according to the allegory with which we started, this process of transformation requires that the cubic stone itself must change. The 6 square surfaces of the cube unfold to form the 6 sections of the Christian cross, which represents the gift of the light and living Word of God offered as a sacrifice to the entire world. As the first chapter of the Gospel of John tells us, it is the light with which everything was made, including each of us. Thus, the next step in this view of the great work is to open ourselves up, freely sharing our divine essence and radiating all those rectified qualities for the benefit of others. It is the most truly charitable expression of love for all God's children and creation. That may sound wonderful and inspiring, but as with the entire process of transformation leading up to this point, it can be very challenging, hard work. Here we might recall the words of Jesus in Luke chapter 9, verses 23 and 24. Quote, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross daily and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will save it. End quote. In this context, these words describe the cross taken up by one who has sacrificed the old self in the process of transformation, and they provide the caveat that sharing the divine light we find within us can sometimes also be a burdensome act of sacrifice in itself. Nonetheless, it is the most beautiful, liberating, and joyful thing any of us can do with our lives. And so the blossoming of that beauty out of our core is represented by the delicate red rose of passion and sacrifice. Fittingly, you might recall that Bohm also placed a rose at the center of his Masonic emblem of the great work. Despite being distracted from it by our own ignorance, fears, vices, and superfluities, deep within us is a longing to manifest this mystic rose in our lives. That is why many people are drawn to Freemasonry and Rosicrucianism like moths to a flame. Under the pseudonym Fiona MacLeod, the poet William Sharp, a member of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, touchingly and inspiringly captured that longing in the poem The Rose of Flame. O fair, immaculate rose of the world, rose of my dream, my rose, beyond the ultimate gates of dream I have heard thy mystical call. It is where the rainbow of hope suspends, and the river of rapture flows, and the cool sweet dews from the wells of peace forever fall. And all my heart is aflame because of the rapture and peace. And I dream in my waking dreams and deep in the dreams of sleep, till the high, sweet, wonderful call that shall be the call of release shall ring in my ears as I sink from gulf to gulf and from deep to deep. Sink deep beyond the ultimate dreams of all desire, beyond the uttermost limit of all that the craving spirit knows. Then, then I shall be as the inner flame of thy fire. O fair, immaculate rose of the world, rose of my dream, my rose. As illustrated by the Rose Cross layman of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, the outpouring of the divine light and word through a transformed human being is a living expression of the very essence of all the vital powers and processes of creation. Such souls are crucial to sustaining the well-being and progress of humanity. Or, as this image states in Latin, the rose gives the bees honey. This is taken from the text Summum Bonum, meaning the highest good, published in 1629 by Robert Flood under the name Joachim Frisius. Flood wrote a number of works in defense of the Rosicrucians in 1616 and 1617. This final development in the transformation of the cubic stone into the mystic rose upon the cross of light is itself never ending. There is no point before death at which the soul who has become a living rose cross can say, "It is finished." Indeed, even after death, the work of such souls, the energies they have poured out, continue to affect the world, and their wisdom, strength, and beauty may continue to live in the hearts and minds of others, even for generations to come. Recall the opening quote from Eliphas Levi. Quote, "The great work is, before all things, the creation of man by himself, that is to say, the full and entire conquest of his faculties and his future. It is especially the perfect emancipation of his will." End quote. What Levi suggests is that your true will, your deepest spiritual instinct and drive, is to transform, realize, and express yourself as a living rose cross, and so become a blessing of divine love to the world around you. That is the great work, the builder's art, which both Masonry and Rosicrucianism are constantly prompting us to perform. Thank you for joining me in this presentation, From the Cubical Stone to the Mystic Rose, a Journey of Transformation. Now I bid you farewell with these words. Past astral gardens vast and deep, where archetypes in silence keep, the Logos speaks the Mason's word. Through stars above, his call is heard. Sophia shines, her wisdom flows, in moonlit grace her presence glows. The wisdom and the word align, their love entwines with arts divine. Together they in union meet their mysteries of bliss complete. The rosy cross, their sacred bloom, is born to light the darkest gloom. O rosy cross, O sign divine, you shine across the span of time. May we respond with love sublime and labor on to build your shrine. Through strife and pain, with truth we merge upon the cross where planes converge. The thorns, protectors of the light, ensure our way is pure and right. In petals red, the soul unfolds, a flame that providence upholds. Through cross and rose the truth appeals, a symbol of what love reveals. Thus Logos and Sophia call to guide and gather one and all. In harmony their seekers find the path to peace for heart and mind. O rosy cross, O sign divine, you shine across the span of time. May we respond with love sublime and labor on to build your shrine. Beneath the rosy cross we rise to unity that never dies. The light eternal breaks our chains, as one we dwell where beauty reigns. With all at last in love's embrace, creation rings with boundless grace. O rosy cross, O sign divine, you shine across the span of time. May we respond with love sublime and labor on to build your shrine.